All right, so now let's talk about some solutions. These are the possible solutions for possibly fixing log mode and class of service issues. One of them is to predefine every resource as a CDRC in every node where the resource does not reside normally. On that CDRC, you can specify the mode tab and the log mode. You can do it either on the CDRC or on the group statement, and that avoids you using the default log mode table, right? And once you've got the D-log mode on there, if you've got these mode tables defined, it allows you to actually, it allows you to continue using mode tabs, different mode tabs for each resource. You could have mode tab A for some SLUs and mode tab B. Maybe they have the same log modes in them, but they resolve to slightly different class of service names, or maybe they got slightly different pacing windows or RU sizes or screen sizes or something like that in there, right? So one way to do it is to predefine every resource as a CDRC and code the mode tab and D-log mode operands on there. The second way to do this, now by the way, nobody wants to do that. It's an administrative nightmare. Maintaining CDRCs for every possible resource. Not only would it be hard to continue adding them for new resources, it would be very hard to clean up the ones you don't need anymore. And so you really see this as like an ever-increasing list of CDRCs you have to maintain. Second choice is, well, if we're always going to use IST-INCLM when I don't have my mode table set up correctly, then why don't I just take all of my mode tabs and shove them inside IST-INCLM? That way I'll always find my mode tab, right? Well, the answer really was, we've always been telling you not to modify INCLM. Instead, make your own table. It's hard for us to go back to recommending that you modify INCLM. So that's one problem. The second problem is, you'd have to remodify INCLM with each new release. So every time a new release came out, you'd have to take your mode tabs and merge them into ours and then recompile it again, which we didn't think necessarily everyone would want to do. But it would allow you to use the same log mode table for every resource if you wanted to. Of course, you could still predefine resources with other mode tabs if you wanted to as well. The third way to do this is to basically use use the dyne mode tab and dyne D-log mode start options to specify the mode table and D-log mode that are going to be used for dynamic CDRCs. At least now, whenever we create a dynamic CDRC, we've got a mode tab and a D-log mode specified so that we're not using default values. Unfortunately, the dyne D-log mode start option isn't very useful because most times all of these resources would not want to use the same D-log mode name. But you could, for example, create a mode tab that has all of your log mode tables in it that map to all the right class of service names and stuff like that. And then I call that the mother of all log mode tables. You create one huge mode table that has every possible log mode from every one of your other mode tables in it. And if you use that for dyne mode tab start option, then now every dynamically created CDRC would use a log mode table that has all of your log mode names in it instead of IST-INCLM and using some defaulting. So that works out quite well. Just one thing to keep in mind, we do not use that for predefined CDRCs. So if you're going to create the mother of all log mode tables and use it for your dyne mode tab start option, you still need to go into all your predefined CDRCs and code the mode tab operand on them. If you've got thousands of them, you can code a group statement at the top of your CDRC deck and code the mode tab on the group statement, and it will sift down to all the CDRCs below it until the next group, for example. So there are ways to minimize the hassle, but the bottom line is, remember that if you use the mother of all log mode tables with the dyne mode tab start option, it's not used for predefined CDRCs. You'll still have to predefine those with their own mode tab. Finally, the last one here was use the cost mapping tables instead. Maybe not, should be, probably not, or hopefully not. It works well for SLUNet, but not so well for PLUNet. It requires some log mode table work anyway, just to make sure that the right log mode name and the right class of service name is being chosen for the log mode stuff. And as soon as you do that initial setup, I found, which you pretty much have to do on all these interchange nodes, right, to make sure that the right interchange node for this session gets in control. Once you've done that setup, it really seems to me like the cost mapping tables are not really needed for anything at all, except APPN to subarea over, if you're doing HPR, over virtual routes. You may need the APPN to subarea table. I think I've got a bullet on that one later, and so I'll save my discussion of that little red bullet for later. All right, so the last thing I've got here, or one of the last things I've got here, is my recipe for success. These are the steps that I would recommend customers take in order to make sure that their log mode and class of service issues are all resolved. First thing is create the consolidated log mode table that contains all of your log mode names. That's the mother of all log mode tables. The first thing you need to do is find all your other log mode tables and merge them all together into this log mode table. Use the consolidated log mode table for at least your dyne mode tab start option so all the dynamic CDRCs use it. And also remember to code it on your predefined CDRCs also, just in case. All right? It works best if a consolidated table is used for all of your hosts and all your resources and all your hosts, but it's really most important to make sure that it's used for these resources that typically don't have a mode tab coded on them. It's okay to continue to use smaller log mode tables for your LUs and applications, but just remember that if you ever add new mode entries to those tables, you need to make sure you add it to your consolidated mother of all log mode tables also. So this could become a bit of an administrative headache, but still not as much, I think, as previous ones. Remember that if you're using this type method, you still need to code a mode tab and a delog mode on every one of your predefined CDRCs, because we do not use the mode tab start option for the predefined CDRCs, only for the dynamics. Do not use the cost mapping table unless absolutely necessary. Do never ever activate them. If you ever do activate them and you find out you don't need them anymore, create a dummy mapping with no default entry and activate that one so that we never find a valid mapping anymore. But my suggestion is do not use the class of service mapping table methods. Number 4, ensure that PLU-initiated sessions include a log mode name. There's no way that you can typically do that, or customers can typically do that, because they have to go to their application folks and change the way the application works. Most of them are not willing to do that. So if you cannot do that, the only way that I can solve this problem for you is to predefine your secondary LUs as CDRCs on the primary LU host and make sure that they have the right mode tab and delog mode code on them. That's the only way that I can solve this problem for you. The last entry down here is the APPN-COS mapping tables. That's, again, I recommend that you do not use board and node cost mapping tables at all unless there's a real need to have non-standard APPN class of service names in your network or in another customer network. But if you do decide that board and node cost mapping tables are required because of that, then remember you have to put the board and node cost mapping table on both sides of the network boundary, if there's a board and node on both sides of the network boundary. And you also need to make sure that those tables are inverse mappings of each other. They have to be one-to-one mappings so that they're invertible. All right, so I had a customer come to me one time and ask me, so Jonathan, I just bought another company, we're merging our companies together, it'd be nice if I could get these sessions to work for now, just even if they're not using the right log mode name and class of service, and I'll figure out those issues later, but I just want the sessions to come up right now. So is there any way to set up good defaults? The answer is yes, for all of them. If you have a log mode name, but that log mode name cannot be found inside any of your log mode tables, I've already told you that we use the IST-COS-DF entry in the log mode table, basically, which includes the COS and APPN-COS operands on there. So if you want to be able to use this thing, just make sure the IST-COS-DF start option includes the type of application that you're talking about. Is it an Apple? Is it represented as an independent LU or a CDRC? Or is it represented by a dependent LU or an LU RDT itself? The bottom line is if you have IST-COS-DF set up and the right start option set, then unknown log mode names will at least resolve you to the correct APPN or subarea class of service name. If you resolve a log mode name to a subarea class of service name, but then you look up that subarea class of service name in IST-SD-COS trying to find the virtual route list and you don't find one, is there a way to resolve an unrecognized subarea class of service name? There has always been an operand called substitute equals yes on the COS tab entry inside IST-SD-COS. And if you code substitute equals yes on an entry, it means if you don't find any other matching entry, then this is the VR list that I want you to use for this. All right, so there's a way to resolve unknown subarea cost names. The way to resolve unknown APPN-COS names, and again, this means we found a log mode name, we looked it up, and we found a valid APPN class of service name, but when we looked up the valid APPN class of service name in those line rows and node row tables, we couldn't find a match in there for it, so we couldn't resolve it to a wait. In that case, there's a start option called APPN-COS, which defaults to none, I believe. But you can set the start option to a valid APPN-COS name. And basically says whenever you have an unknown APPN-COS name, use this APPN-COS name instead. Our recommendation typically is that if you turn this APPN-COS start option on, you probably want to use the pound connector, the middle flavor of your APPN class of service, just so that the unrecognized class of service names don't get the highest priority, but they don't get stuck behind file transfers or something like that either.